In this episode, I'm hosting Mahesh Narayan, who is a responsible AI leader with over 20 years of experience working for one of the leading technology consulting firms. The topic of the conversation is operationalizing trust in AI. We'll start by asking, when it comes to building trustworthy AI, what does it mean in practice? How do we transition from the principles such as transparency or fairness into the process, the implementation side of things, the risk controls, audits, and metrics?
You need to make it a part of your planning process and make it a part of your design rather than really thinking about it later in the process.
We then move on to chat about whether leading AI companies have a way to get around the responsible AI principles. Is there a way that they can look responsible on paper, but not in practice?
There are agencies which come externally to audit you.
We discuss different governance frameworks such as the ISO 42001, the NIST RMF, as well as the EU AI Act. What are the differences and similarities between these frameworks? Are they restrictive to innovation and the progress of AI these days?
That ISO 42001 brings you is that these agencies who come to audit you are also liable. Tomorrow, if these organizations who have been audited get into the wrong side of the law, even the agencies who have audited them will also have liabilities to take care.
We then get a little bit more philosophical and discuss the human cultural elements of the notion of trust.
We need to ensure that we don't do anything wrong with human rights, right?
Are the geographic and jurisdictional differences going to play any role in operationalizing the notion of trust across the globe?
We don't even know where their jurisdictions are. Of course, law has a way of defining the jurisdictions quite well, but I think more and more it's becoming a global phenomenon.
We then talk about the future of AI, maybe the next 5 to 10 years. What does it look like in that horizon? Is it possible to get to a future where people can rest assured that they can trust in AI? What are the bottlenecks, the technical, the social, and the political ones?
I think the fundamental problem with the black box model is the way corporates function, right?
In the end, I asked Mahesh to give advice to anybody who is just getting started as a consultant in the field of responsible AI. So if that's you, make sure to stick to the end to see what Mahesh has to say. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome to the show, Mahesh.
Thank you so much, Amir. Really looking forward. Absolutely a great initiative from your end to do these post podcasts for everyone to benefit from. So yeah, looking forward.
Appreciate it. So I want to start by asking you, when it comes to building trustworthy AI, how do companies or consultants go about transitioning from the principles to the process? So the principles would be things like fairness, transparency, and so on. And the process would be the implementation side of things, right? The audits, the metrics, and the risks. How would that transition exactly happen?
Yeah, I think the first and foremost, I think it's very important that all the companies really take responsible AI as the core goal. Many times it's always an afterthought. So my recommendation would be that companies plan their AI initiatives with responsible AI by design, which means you need to make it a part of your planning process and make it a part of your design rather than really thinking about it later in the process. So I think the transition starts with the company is taking this as a very important thing, which will help them to develop their brand, help them to ensure their customers are safe, help them to ensure that they don't get into trouble with the law and things like that. And of course, it all starts with ensuring that we have the right principles and ensuring that those principles are then put into practice through developing the right procedures, processes, controls in your organization.
Right. So basically, if I understand correctly, this is what's going to happen before the implementation side of things. So that's part of the initiation of the systems, the models, where the trust is embedded in the process, not just afterwards, because I would think that's just safer to take the precautions early on in the process than when things go wrong, want to take care of it. Is that correct?
Okay. And one more thing, typically there is a misnomer that responsible AI or AI governance comes in the way of innovation. That's not true at all. None of the research establishes that. In fact, it is proved that while if you embed responsible AI right from the design stage, it helps you to innovate more responsibly and even with agility. Just because of the fact that you don't have to spend time later, you don't have to do any overwork or rework later to avoid the pitfalls that might come in you. So rather than that, you plan for it in the design stage itself.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the next question that I want to ask you is, when it comes to the risk of operationalizing trust, is there a risk of leading to some sort of trust theater, quote unquote, where the organizations look responsible on the paper, but in reality, they're not? So I'm asking, are there ways that they would get around the responsibility of the AI systems that they're designing?
I doubt, just because of the fact that the process is robust and the audit procedures are quite big, and there are agencies which come externally to audit you. If these are in place, there is very well less chance that many of these things will be only on paper. It's very important that people take it seriously and ensure that all the guidelines and controls are embedded and deployed widely. I think one thing which comes in their way is AI literacy in the organization. While people might have heard about AI, responsible AI, they might not know what it means on a daily workflow or daily work routine specifically. Hence, it is important for organization to really train their employees to be not only telling them how to use AI do's and don'ts, also to tell their responsibilities of what they need to be doing to ensure the AI is safe.
That's a relief to know that it's very unlikely for that to happen, because I think that's one of the concerns that a lot of general public has, where some companies, just judging from the historical resume of some of the major companies who are developing AI systems, where there's been leakage of data or privacy or those kind of things, I think there's a general concern just from the research that I've read and the conversations that I've had with people. So it's good to know that, at least in principle, there are robust processes, as you put it, that would prevent that.
Absolutely. And specifically, the ISO 42001 is fairly a list of controls that organization need to kind of deploy. And there are external consultants who will come in and audit you. And the difference that ISO 42001 brings you is that these agencies who come to audit you are also liable. Tomorrow, if these organizations who have been audited gets into the wrong side of the law, even the agencies who have audited them will also have liabilities to take care. So hence, they ensure that they do a good job in auditing and making it very detailed and maybe doing a few iterations and things like that.
I see. Okay, that's good to know, because once you're responsible as the person or the company who is doing the auditing, then I think you definitely have to do a good job to make sure things don't go wrong. Excellent. You mentioned the ISO 42001. So that's just for the audiences. That's one of the governance frameworks. And then there are other frameworks such as the NIST RMF, the EU Act, and so on. So tell us, what are these frameworks exactly? How are they different from each other? How do they help organizations to operationalize trust? Is there a way that they fall short?
So ISO 42001 is a standard which is provided by also International Standards Organization, which is saying that, okay, all the organizations should align their responsible AI initiatives along the guidelines that they provided. While EUA Act is an act of Parliament, European Parliament in this case, and NIST is a guideline provided by the NIST in US. That's the difference between all three. And what was the next second question that you asked? Sorry.
Yeah, so how do these frameworks actually help the organizations to operationalize the trust in AI?
Yeah, I think what they do is to really help organization to know what are the controls that they need to put in place as a process. So
Right.
I think the good thing about ISO, good thing about the UA Act, all of them have a list of controls. So controls are nothing but list of actions which the organization have to implement in their processes. And these are very black and white, and you will know what to do, what not to do. And hence, it is helping organization to understand exactly how to operationalize responsible AI. And I think you mentioned about gaps. I think gaps essentially is coming from the fact that this domain is evolving a big time, right? Now, with the agentic AI space, responsible AI, of course, have some agentic AI guidelines as well. But I think even the law, even the standards have to keep in, they need to be updated very regularly. That's what I saw, that many times, if it is 6 to 9 months to 1 year old, I think by the time, I think a lot of things would have changed. So I think one requirement would be that these standards, laws, and others need to also keep pace.
I see. Okay, so you also mentioned that there's a difference in terms of the jurisdictions that they operate on, right? So the ISO versus the NIST and the EO, different continents, different kind of jurisdictions. What is the difference in practice that translates to in these frameworks? Is it like the local or jurisdictional differences and the laws and regulations that makes a difference, and yet the process is similar, or is there like more fundamental differences in these as well?
So, yeah, ISO is a global standard. So I think every organization can adopt it. UAI Act is confined to EU as a region. However, because it's the first comprehensive law, most of the other laws take a lot of learnings from this and kind of align along these lines. So maybe you can use it as a standard. For example, if you are in any other parts of the world, but if you align yourself to UAI Act, you would have ensured that you have all strict controls already in place. Maybe from that standpoint, yes. However, for compliance requirements, your legal team will tell you which are the laws which you need to abide by and all that. However, the UI Act is a fairly robust law, which if your organization is aligning with those control requirements, you would be fairly covered.
As someone who's living in North America, so I live in Toronto, Canada, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs who move from regions such as EU to North America because they think the regulations there are a little bit too restrictive in terms of when it comes to the progress of advanced AI systems. What do you think about that?
So I somehow believe that let's not look at these what we call rules and guidelines and controls as restrictions. I think that's may not be the right approach to look at it. I think if we all take a step back, why are we doing it? And globally, our global citizens, why do we need it? We need it because there is this technology which, if not done the right way, can harm, right?
Yeah.
And it's all of our responsibility to ensure that it doesn't harm anyone. It does not keep people away, and it's more inclusive. So let's go with that thought process that while we innovate responsibly, I think all of us, we don't want to create a dragon which we can't control, right? So let's do the right things to ensure that these are things while we take advantage of the advancements of technology, we are also doing that in the general interest of the global citizens, right? Yeah. And in that sense, let's ensure that all the guardrails, all the protections, all that is already built in, and not see that as I think there is a huge misnomer that people see this as a hurdle to innovation, and they say that okay, this cost money and all that. I think it's very important they start talking to their customers. And if you talk to your customers, you will know that they would demand it. Yeah, it's just because of the fact that you are dealing with their data, you are dealing with their convenience, you are dealing with their day-to-day requirements. And if we are not, as a community, as a business organization, taking care of their needs, we are not doing justice to our jobs.
No, absolutely. I personally agree with you for sure, because I feel like we don't want to, exactly like you put it, we don't want to create a dragon that's going to burn us all down or swallow all of us. Absolutely, I agree. It's just that the competition for building up more and more advanced systems and making profit out of different kind of systems that are built on top of these models and technologies, I think that's one of the reasons perhaps where people feel kind of rushed to want to just build and not take too much precautions. But definitely, I agree that if they talk to the customers, people are concerned, right? When you talk to people are concerned about their privacy, the potential shortcomings of these models. At any of the major companies who builds a model once in a time, the things that come out, people show the shortcomings, and that is concerning to people.
Actually, only one metric I have, if you're really looking at this of a hurdle to innovation, just talk to our customers. Yeah, right. And then give them these options. Option one, without any guardrails, you will get a really high-end system. It will do wonders and blah, blah. You will get it in 2 months and all that. And option two, with guardrails, with protection, with these things, maybe taking a few time, some cost and things like that. What would they prefer? Yeah. And the answer would be yes.
Hey, everybody. If you've been watching to this point, I want to thank you deeply, because according to YouTube, most people don't make it to this point. I also want to ask you, like a friend, support me and this podcast in any way you can by subscribing to it, sharing it with anyone who might be interested, or liking the videos if you think they add value to your life. Also, if you know people or organizations who might be interested to be on the podcast, support it or help me grow it, please make sure to get in touch either through the comments or just by shooting me an email to amir@virtuousmachines.com. I'll make sure to put a link to the email as well as my website in the description of the video. All right, perfect. Now, I want to get a little bit more philosophical. So, as a philosopher, what I have learned is that from the ethical standpoint, trust is somehow embedded in the cultural and human dimension of society as well, right? It's not just the technical issues that developers work on, right? How do you think the governance frameworks reflect those human and cultural dimensions into the frameworks that are building, into the processes that they're working on?
Yeah, I think things are very simple. Let's not complicate matters. I think you and I, both of us know that at the base of it, we need to ensure that we don't really do anything wrong with human rights, right? That has a backdrop or has a principle in AI governance or AI ethics. So I think if we see things in a very obvious manner that let's do things by not impacting human rights at all. Yeah, that's the first step. And then step by step, you go up and say that, okay, I will ensure that the AI ethical principles are in place. People know what they need to do and not do. There are do's and don'ts with regard to the people who are developers, who are sellers, who are users. So each of the persona will know what are their responsibilities with regard to responsible AI. I think that's how you build a culture of a responsible AI world, right? Rather than things that you can buy off the shelf and not knowing how harmful that is. I think all of us know that when we buy, say, a baby dress, maybe you're buying a baby talcum powder or baby wipes or anything of that sort. I think in our minds, the first and foremost is how safe it is. And we don't cut corners with regard to brand. We don't cut corners with regard to price. And we always want things which are of very good quality. Let's look at it the same way. Yeah. Here we are putting even bigger things at risk. And if you look up on the internet on what are the harms that are being caused, there are phenomenal harms, right? People committing suicide, interacting with chatbots, people losing money, people being left out from the process because of biased algorithms and all that. So those are things which really impact human rights at the basic level, right? And human rights is something that every human on the earth will want, and that's enshrined in the UN Charter. So all nations are compelled to provide that to each citizen of the world. So I think given that, I think if we as a group, as technology firms or companies who are using AI, if we all ensure that our customers, citizens, and all their rights are not impeached or impacted, that's it. We don't have to think anything more.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense where if you appeal to basic human rights as the core of the things that you want to protect and make sure they flourish and everyone has that to just at least minimally take care of those and then take it from there. One thing I want to a little bit push for though is the kind of regional or geographic differences, right? So between different regions, continents, even countries, the regulations, the cultural and values of the societies are different in different ways. And the things, for example, the freedom of speech would be a valuable thing to want to protect and make sure it flourishes and grows. But different jurisdictions, different countries have different interpretation of how the limits of, let's say, freedom of speech, right? How do you think we'll be able to resolve those, especially given the frameworks that we have? Is there a way to have a more universal approach to different jurisdictions, or is there in the end going to be some fundamental differences, just like in the regulations and laws at the human level in the societies? Do you think the AI would be an exception in this case?
Good question. I think if you look at it, each jurisdiction, as you rightly said, has their own interpretation of how they need to address this challenge. However, if you look at it, the technology is such that it doesn't matter where your technology is deployed. The users are global citizens, right? We don't even know where our servers of some of these AI tools that we are using on a day-to-day basis. So we don't even know where their jurisdictions are. Of course, law has their way of defining their jurisdictions quite well, but I think more and more it's becoming a global phenomenon. Hence, you would see the multilateral agencies are taking note of all this. OECD has come up with their own guidelines. UN Security Council, the few weeks back, had a discussion on how to enshrine responsible AI practices. Rightly, all the global multilateral agencies are taking note and coming up with guidelines which they are really requesting all nations to abide by. So my take going forward, it will not be just jurisdictional. Of course, each region and each nation will have their jurisdictional responsibilities, but more and more I see that this will be standardized given the fact that each and every person in the globe is equally impacted. And hence, global guidelines will be abided by.
Okay, everything you said makes a lot of sense. I want to look at this from a different angle though. So let's say different companies, let's say OpenAI. Sam Altman, the CEO of the company, just a couple of days ago, he had an interview with Tucker Carlson on his podcast where Tucker basically pushed him a little bit to see where the kind of the ethical principles or the guidelines on how safe these systems are, or the ChatGPT in this case is, where those principles come from. And then in the end, Sam Altman said there's like a group of people in OpenAI who's responsible for that, and I'm the person at the head of that team. We'll decide based on what we think are, let's say, liberal Western values, right, that are going to be determine how these models operate. That kind of shows me, well, in the end, the developers of these systems, who are potentially, majority of them are located in Western countries at the moment anyway, even though other countries, let's say on China, for example, they're also growing very fast. But certain values that are embedded in the training and the safety, the guardrails of these models from the get-go, how do you think those internal training safety processes, how do they interact with more global frameworks such as the ISO? Do you think there's a friction there?
Yeah, so I think you took an example of a foundation model. However, when you look at a use case, when it gets deployed, organization ensure they are putting the right guardrails, whether it is using RAG to make customize or fine tune the model and things like that. So there will be a lot of actions taken by the companies to fine tune the model to make it work much better for their set of customers. That is one way while how these problems will be taken care of. And second, I'm not too worried because the customers would, in the end of the day, kind of demand it. So customers will push organization to say that, hey, I will prefer a safer product than an unsafe product. However, better technologically advanced it is, right? So I think all of us, as I mentioned earlier, it is a very simple choice. Even if a product is really advanced, but it is unsafe, we will the adoption will be impacted, right? The companies will only be forced to ensure that they are safe so that they can really win the trust of their customers.
So I guess, again, we go back to the notion of trust and talking to the customers. So that is absolutely, from what I understand, crucial for the companies and for just the whole process of putting safety and guardrails to ensure that the systems are safe. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, looking ahead for 5 to 10 years, what do you think would it mean for an AI system to be trustworthy? Do you think we're going to get to a point where trust in AI is quite natural and people are less and less concerned? Do you think that's a potential future?
So I don't think I can foretell anything which is going to happen in the future. But I think the way I'm looking at it, of course, the technology itself is undergoing huge changes, right? By the day. So I'm really struggling to really figure out where it is going and things like that. But I think wherever it goes, I think if it has to really provide value to customers, it needs to be trustworthy. Yeah, that is the key. So I'm pretty confident that trust will be at the core of any development which happens. However, I'm also a true believer that with advancement in technology, with quantum and others coming in, I think there are many ways by which some of these things can be embedded in the process itself, so that the people down the line need not worry about some of these things. So I'm optimistic. I'm also a believer that with the advances in technology, with the use of quantum and others, some of these things will be embedded as a given, in the future.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you think the concern about reaching to a point where we have AGI that has superhuman capabilities and a potential threat to humanity, do you think just given the pace of progress that's happening in the field of AI, do you think that's a possible future, or is the concern really grounded in reality?
So if the question is whether AGI is inevitable, I would say absolutely. AGI is the path which everyone is taking. However, there are a few challenges. I think all of us know that compute is coming in the way, or the compute cost is coming in the way, the energy intensity is coming in the way. So till the time we, as humanity, we crack the fusion problem with regard to energy, I think energy costs are not going to come down, and it's not going to come to a point where your compute is going to be cheaper and things like that. Till that time, I doubt whether AGI will be a reality. But down the line, in a few years or few decades, do I think it may happen? Absolutely, it can. Yeah, I think as humanity, we have progressed quite a lot in the last few centuries, and I'm a true believer that we will also cross the chasm when it comes to this question in front of us. But whether it is going to harm us or not, I don't see. In the end of the day, it's built by humans, and we know what kind of guardrails we need to put in place. I doubt whether we will be in a situation where it will start to harm us globally. And I think the kind of theories that are being propagated and like a doomsday scenario and all that, I don't believe in those. I actually think we can take the dragon and use it to our advantage. Yeah.
And then the kind of black box nature of these models, right? So these advanced large language models, they are basically deep neural networks where there's this black box nature of these models where we don't exactly know why certain neurons get activated to lead to an output or to a particular decision, right? And that is an active area of research in AI safety, the interpretability research. Do you think that would be a bottleneck in order for us to make sure that these models are going to be safe in the future? Do you think we need to get to a point where we actually get to know what's happening and why is it happening inside these models in the absolute details? Do you think that would be very important?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, and maybe a little philosophical as well. I think the fundamental problem with the black box model is the way corporates function, right? And how the investments happen in this case. So because of the fact that these are closely guarded, a few individuals calling the shot and things like that, it is guarded, right? And each of them trying to outshine others, and hence they do things which may not be all what is called white and black. Yeah, there could be a gray area, and how they do the pre-training, the kind of data they use for pre-training and all that, and no one knows. And I don't think no one will ever get to know as well. Yeah, but let's keep all that in the past. And but organizations have figured out how to kind of solve for this, right? So they know that while they kind of create a Gen AI solution, they ensure that some of these things are taken care of by building the right guardrails, using RAG as a method to fine-tune the model and things like that. So people have found methods to overcome some of the risks which come with the black box models. But in the future, we also believe that when governments start playing a larger role, when global multilateral agencies start playing a larger role, and with things like bias, things like the models only understanding the Western way of looking at things and things like that, maybe some of those would also maybe drive companies, especially from East, to adopt a different method, which are more open source, which are more open, which are more open books for everyone to really go and check. But till the time, I think people have figured out a way to safeguard themselves.
Oh, that's a great point, I think, because it is true that because of the high competition and the privacy of these companies, a lot of the research that's happening is pretty much internal. They're not going to publish it, especially as some of the major players. And I think that's, as you say, if we defer that to the governments or the public in general to have more control and to demand more transparency from these companies. How do they do their research? How do they do their training? Let's say at OpenAI, we don't exactly know what exactly they are doing in the process. We know that they're trying to make sure there are safety measures in place, but just because of the private nature of the research, they don't publish these in some great detail. And definitely, as you say, I think deferring the power of the demand to the governments and the public, that's gonna ask for some more transparency and then motivate companies to take different directions if they have to.
Absolutely.
So I guess I want to ask you one last question. You have been working in this field for many years. And I'm sure people who are just getting started would want to know, how do they navigate starting as, let's say, a consultant in the field of responsible AI, especially given the fast pace of progress in the field of AI, where even for a lot of experts, it's a pretty challenging task to catch up with all the progress that's happening every day. What would you say to someone who's just getting started? How do they navigate this very dynamic field?
Oh, absolutely. So, in fact, even myself, I've been getting myself educated quite a lot in the space. In the last 6 months, I've got at least 5 certifications. So, I truly recommend that all of people who are really aspiring to get into this field to start learning. Yeah, be a avid learner, be very active on Twitter, follow the right people, or be on LinkedIn. Look at the right leaders, what they are saying, what they are writing, and things like that. And of course, YouTube is a great resource. Coursera is a great resource. There are a few great. In fact, you don't have to pay money itself. In fact, a lot of the certification which I took, whether it is Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all of them are free. Yeah, go through those trainings, get yourself certified, and maybe down the line get yourself maybe certified on ISO 2001. And immediate request, pick up the ISO document, pick up the UA Act document, and go through it. I mean, that itself, and maybe use ChatGPT or others to really summarize it well in a easy language and all that. And absolutely, trust me, you will be up to speed in no time.
Of course, thank you very much. No, that's a priceless advice. I really appreciate that, because I know a lot of people care about ensuring these systems are safe, these technologies are safe and taken care of. And they might not have a lot of backgrounds and experience, and they want to get involved, but it is also a big space. So this advice is, I think, very helpful. Excellent. Awesome. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it, Mahesh. I want to ask you one last question. Where can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, you can go on to LinkedIn and can search my name, Mahesh Narayan. You can find me there. Yeah, and I'm also active on Twitter, so you can look me up there as well. So I'm quite active. I can share a lot of things, knowledge with regard to responsible AI. Yeah, I mean, in these two platforms, I'm very active, so you can look me up there.
Absolutely. Now, I'll make sure to put the link to your LinkedIn as well as Twitter in the description of the video. And with that, thanks again, Mahesh. I really appreciate your time. This was a priceless conversation, and I'm sure the audiences will think the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. All right, everybody. I personally learned a lot, and I loved the conversation with Mahesh. I especially liked his positive and bright perspective on the future of AI, how people and governments can contribute to making it safe, and where and how to learn about it. Anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this as well, and you learned something from it. If you did, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who might be interested. Thanks, everybody, and I'll see you in the next episode.